Mason Cooley once said, "Reading gives us someplace to go when we have to stay where we are." Hi, book friends. I'm Mindy from Bookends, here with Scott Richards to share our next episode of Between the Bookends. Today, we are so excited to have author Amy Poepple with us to chat about books. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me. I want to hear that quote one more time.
It was great. Reading gives us some place to go when we have to stay where we are.
I love that.
And so fitting for the books we're going to talk about. Oh my goodness, I love it. Amy was just our guest for the Little River Literary Luncheon, and she was sharing her newest book, Far and Away. Amy, will you give us just a little bit of information for those of our listeners that weren't able to join us today?
Yes, absolutely. So I wrote a book called Far and Away, which is about two families, one in Dallas, Texas, and one in Berlin, Germany. And for various reasons, scandalous and otherwise, they decide to swap homes for what begins out, it sort of starts as an indeterminate period of time. The book ends up taking place over the course of a summer, and during that summer, the two families become completely entwined in each other's lives, and they meet each other's friends and neighbors, and it gets a little messy in a good way.
In a good way, yes, absolutely. I loved it. And I love that it's a story about where your home is, what makes home.
Definitely. One of the most interesting things for me was, as I got to know the characters, was trying to figure out who was going to like their new place and who was going to be homesick for their homeland and who would surprise us about that. And I didn't know at the outset. I really didn't know my German character Otto, for example, moving him to Dallas, Texas. He's a very judgmental person at the outset of the book, so I wondered, is he going to judge Texas and be very judgmental about the heat and the size of the stores and the hats and everything? So it was really fun for me as I got to know each character, that it made it easier for me to get an idea for how they were going to either fit in or reject the new place.
And I'll tell you, he ended up being one of I could just eat him up at the end of,
I have such a soft spot for Otto, and he's not a perfect person.
Right.
I mean, I don't write perfect characters. He's definitely a flawed person, but he grew on me so much as I wrote the book.
Yes.
He comes across one way at the beginning, which I do think is a big part of who he is. But I liked the way travel changed him. I liked the way Texas changed him. And I just warmed, the more I wrote Otto's chapters, the more I warmed up to him.
Agreed. And I love the Berlin setting. I'm trying to think if I've read anything with kind of a modern German take on it. So that was very, very cool. There's everything set in Paris and blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
So this was a very neat, different take. I loved it.
And it's not, it's not historical fiction either, which is what where we see Berlin a lot. I lived in Berlin. I have such a soft spot in my heart for that city. It is like an affordable New York.
Ooh.
It's still very expensive, but not compared to New York. It has all the culture, all the heart, incredible restaurants, incredible museums, beautiful old pre-war buildings, beautiful old churches. But it's a more livable city than New York in a lot of ways. And for me, it's sprawling, and I never feel like I know it completely.
You're always finding new things. That's
always
great.
Finding new neighborhoods, new places. But also, it has changed so much since the first time I went there. I mean, if you think of the transformation a city like Berlin has gone through since, say, 1989.
True.
You know, it's the building and it's just so changed. And the wall, for example. Yeah. So it's been fun for me to sort of see some of that transformation in my lifetime.
I love that part of it. I think you're right. I think I have, kind of my original mindset of Berlin. And so I just love that part. I discovered you when I read The Sweet Spot a couple years ago and loved it. And I think it's just magical the way you take really real life events and write about them. And we can laugh at, because sometimes what else do you do? And in the events of mix-ups and craziness, and not tragedy per se, but just, things that in life are less than lovely.
Yes. Yeah. I prefer to try to find the humor if I can. Of course, that's not always possible, but anytime I can find the humor in a situation, that's my happy place, and that's my survival strategy. I did when I moved to Germany. It was not always easy. I really did struggle fitting in, learning the language. Can I tell a slightly dirty story?
Always. Yes.
I promise it's not that bad. My husband actually just corrected the story because I was telling it to somebody, and he's like, that's not quite what happened happened. But I was, you have to bag your own groceries in Germany, and it gets really hectic because the people in the grocery line behind you are in a huge hurry.
Yes.
And if you are not used to bagging your own groceries and they're coming flying down the conveyor belt, you have to work to keep up. So I was doing that, and it was hectic and frantic, and I backed into a man who was standing next to his wife, just backed into him, and I said to him in German, "I am so sorry that we just beep."
And you meant to say
bumped into you.
Yes.
So you can imagine.
Oh, excellent.
But the verb that I used is not only just did we? I'm sorry, did we? But it's the crudest form. The crudest form, like like it would just make me blush even in English, And his wife glared at me, and I was like, "What? What?" I did not understand. So I went home and I said to my husband, I had the weirdest incident in this story. He was like, "You asked that man. You were apologized. You regretted that you had him."
Wow.
That's
and
excellent.
I was like,
that is an excellent
oops.
story. Yeah. He's telling that story also.
I'm sure his wife is probably telling that story.
Man.
But that kind of thing, even in the moment, yes, when my husband told me what I'd said, I was like, face palm. I was like, okay, now I get it.
Never go to that store.
I will never show my face again. But it sometimes takes me 5 years before I can laugh at it. Sometimes it takes me 5 minutes, but there are other things that can happen that are, so peinlich, as they say in German, so embarrassing that it takes me a while before I can see the humor. Too soon, right? When we say too soon, sometimes things are too soon for me, and it takes me a while where I can say, okay, now I see what was funny about that.
And I think that's when you are reading about those events, you can find the humor in them. When I first started Far and Away, the first scene, and the mom is at lunch, and she gets a text from her teenage son, and immediately I was engrossed. And I thought to myself, I have to keep reading this because I need to know what she's going to do, because this is going to happen to me one day. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, how is she going to handle this? Because I'm going to need to know, because this is so real.
Yes.
So
I think
I love that.
It's a very rare family where you do not have catastrophes, big and small,
Drama
along the way.
happens.
If you're raising kids, they're going to make mistakes. And I think we have to just embrace that too. Nora Ephron said, life is messy, but embrace the mess. Because what else can you do?
Exactly.
And we can't expect our kids to be perfect.
No.
And of course, there are different levels of terrible things that our children can do and ways that they can let us down and let themselves down. But I really was trying to sort of walk that tightrope of that he did something that was egregious enough to get him thrown out of school, but that once you really understood what he did, that it wasn't quite as bad.
Right, and he was never an unlikable character.
No, he's a good kid. I think Jack is a good kid.
So all of your stories they're just so real, but they're just so fun at the same time. I'm kind of envisioning you typing away and by yourself, I don't know, and just cracking yourself up. You have to, right?
I do. And then my dog cocks his head at me like, what's so funny? No, I do that a lot. And the other thing that I do is when I get a little giddy when I realize that a character that I planted at the beginning of the story, suddenly I could plant that person here. And then, what if she showed up here? And then what if at the end? And I realize characters, you sometimes wonder, do I need that? I don't like to have people in my book that don't need to be there. You don't want people in there that do not serve the plot, serve the structure. So when I realize that a character can work on more than one level, that I can have them here because it sort of sets the tone. So I have this character, Sylvie. She shows up at the beginning. She's a new neighbor. And so it's like, okay, so this is how a Texan would sort of be moving into a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of setting that tone. But then when I realized, she could have this other purpose in the book, and she could help us see Greta in a certain way, and then she could help us see Otto in a certain way. Those are the moments that I'm not necessarily laughing out loud to myself, but I'm squealing.
Yes.
I'm like, I know what to do with this person.
They're threading through. That is great.
Yeah.
Well, we always start our guests off and ask, what made you a reader? What got you reading? way back when?
The Preston Royal Library in Dallas, Texas. And my summer reading list. They would give us this thick summer reading list that really had something in it for everyone and at different levels. So if you were in the elementary school, or let's say if you're in the middle school, they would give you all the books for the different grades for middle school. So you could read something that you wish you'd read last year, but you could also read something that's maybe a little of a challenge. And I would pore over that list.
Just like the choices.
I love the choices. And then to go into the library and to find it. There it is on the shelf. And the funniest thing that happened was when I was cleaning out my dad's house, I found a book that I had checked out in 1974.
A library book.
1974. I tweeted at the library, back when it was Twitter, I tweeted at the library and said, how much trouble am I in?
Yeah.
And I took a picture of the book and and they were like, no, they said, we've waived all fines. Come on in.
That's great. Let us know. Again, it's not connected with the IRS or anything. I would assume,
exactly.
Yes, as a child, I definitely assumed that there were major penalties for that.
Huge penalties. I thought I was in so much trouble.
Yes, of course.
And I brought the book in, and they took pictures of it. I mean, it was practically an antique at that point, But it had the little card, and it was stamped and signed out 1974. But that library, I walked in to return that book, and just the smell of it still just totally took me back.
Love the smell of a library.
Yeah. And I grew up with a family that read. Like, my parents were readers, and my sisters were readers. So that also just makes it easy, because if we ever went somewhere, because Copenhagen is in this book. My dad used to work in Copenhagen in the summer, so we used to go there quite often. And everybody would bring, say, 5 books, but then they would just end up in a pile, and anyone could grab them, and so we would just share books.
That sounds excellent.
And I think there were a couple pivotal moments for me, but one, I would say that like elementary school, middle school really made me a reader, and then like around 13, 14, when I realized it's still cool to read, and you can learn things, and you can be risky. Like I read books that maybe your parents don't want you to read. Why not? Yeah. So that's
great. And then we always love book suggestions. So what have you read recently, or something that you can throw out there that you really, really love?
Yes. So I really, really enjoyed Virginia Evans's book, The Correspondent.
Okay, let me pause you right there. I loved it. We chatted about it in a previous podcast, but I want you to explain it, because your explanation is so great. So
yes, it's an epistolary novel, and it's really told, even though there are letters from other people, the book is really angled toward this one older woman who is a very serious letter writer, and it's really an art for her. And you read all of these letters, and somehow, as your brain pieces them all together, you find out everything about this woman's life.
Yes.
You find out about her past, her shame, things that she'd been wishing she didn't have to think about. And then threaded through the entire thing is an unfinished, unsent letter that she works on periodically. I wept reading that book. There were 2 scenes.
And laughed.
I laughed a lot. But I also she had me crying like 3 different times in that book. And I had the joy of getting to meet the author. And she's just the loveliest person. And I really loved that book. I loved Annie Hartnett's The Road to Tender Hearts. If you like a road trip book, we were talking about Colleen Oakley.
Yes.
And Tanner and Louise.
Yes.
The mostly true story of Tanner and Louise. I loved that one. Unlikely Friendship and Road Trip. And if you like that book, you will love The Road to Tender Hearts.
I love quirky characters. You just pick them up on this, you're just adding them to the car. Come on.
Toss them in. And when Annie Hartnett brings a cat into the story, and the cat has a personality, opinions, skills.
Of course. Well, he does. Of course. These
skills, like really an impressive cat.
Excellent.
And it made me buy more into the story.
Okay, that one's on my radar, so that one's going to have to get bumped
the greatest
up.
Cover.
Yes.
Greatest cover of that book. Yes. And last night I just finished, or yesterday I finished It's a Love Story by Annabelle Monaghan, and I just love her book. She's terribly funny, and her stories have so much heart, and the characters are so real and embraceable, and I just loved that one too.
That's awesome. That's great. Any books you wanted to chit-chat about?
Sort of. But I will tell you, and we'll expand on this in our next podcast, because I'll have a chance to finish.
Am I coming back?
Yes, absolutely.
Sure. You're always welcome back. I am in a Sherlock Holmes phase.
Oh, yes.
Of the new writers of Sherlock Holmes.
Yep.
And I've got 2 started, and I'm just loving the style. These are contemporary books about that. But the other book that I am about halfway through, and I don't remember the name of the book or the author, it's something about the history of the cowboy and gunfighters in Texas. And all of the characters are in there. The Wyatt Earps and the Wild Bill Hickox.
Yes.
So wait, is it nonfiction?
It's nonfiction.
Okay.
And it was such a violent time. And the gunfights and the types of guns and the grubby characters, it is absolutely fascinating.
I bet.
I'll have all the details for our next podcast.
We'll learn more about
So
that.
I'll say that you should come to New York City. There's a show coming to Broadway called Dead Outlaw. It's amazing. I got to see it before it went to Broadway. And it's about an outlaw who, no spoilers here, but he's killed, and it's what happens to his body afterwards, because it's all a true story. This might end up in the book that you're reading, the nonfiction work, because he ended up in a wax museum.
Oh my great! Oh yes.
My.
And for
What's the character's name?
Ask me again in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It's going to come to me because he's Elmer. It's Elmer somebody.
No, I haven't come across that name yet.
And he's a real guy.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
I just finished Real Americans by Rachel Kwong, and I'm reading it for book club. It kind of surprised me. I thought it was going to be a kind of what does it mean to be an American and that kind of thing. And there was a lot in it, and then it also had a lot of genetic implications in there. So it is and was very interesting. I think it'll be a really good talk about it book, and I love those that by the end of book club, I'm going to have a different feeling. I know I'm going to love. Yeah. So I'm excited about that one. Yeah. All right.
That's the best kind of book club book.
That is. And there are so many books that I love, but if there's nothing to talk about, that's not the book club book. That's a about yourself book. Tell us a book that you would love to give to the world. One that you've read that is so pivotal that you just think,
okay,
all humans need to read this book.
I would give to the world Kay Gibbons' Ellen Foster. So Kay Gibbons is the most wonderful writer.
Oh, that's a hard one.
Ellen Foster's a pretty tough book, but there's so much humanity in it. It's a slim little book. It's like very small. And it was originally given to me by a teacher who was my mentor when I was teaching high school. And she said, if you ever encounter a student who says, I'm not a reader, give them this book. So I took it home. I read it in a night. It's not a long book. It's very voicey. It's first person by a young girl named Ellen Foster. You find out why that's her name. But from the very opening lines in that book, it just grabs you. And she has got such spirit and humanity and resilience. And that book just made a really deep impression on me.
That's a great. One of my sons had that as required reading in high school, and so I happened to read it alongside because I was interested, and it was a lot. I mean, but I can see that as being a good one.
Yeah, I mean, there's some tough. I almost feel like it's a trigger warning book because there is some tough stuff in that book,
but important,
really important about poverty and about family dynamics and violence and the girls. The way she embraces life in spite of everything that life has dealt her was just inspiring.
So true. That is what you want to read.
Kay Gibbons is a beautiful writer too.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. All right. Well, those were wonderful book suggestions. Thank you so much. We're so thankful, Amy, that you were able to join us. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. I've got more to add to my list. Thank you, Scott, for helping us get this out to our listeners. And we hope you enjoyed this episode of Between the Bookends. Happy reading.